Welcome back to the Data Strategist channel. My name is Stuart, and today we're going to take you through what is a data analyst. So, in today's video, what are we going to cover off? Well, we're going to cover off what a data analyst is. We're going to cover off a breakdown of the role, career path. I'm going to show you something called T-shape experience, and then we're going to have a look at your tools that you're going to encounter, your methodologies, and your career timeline. How long is it going to take you to become a senior? And then your education. So first off, what is a data analyst? Well, the data analyst collects and analyzes data to identify trends and provide clients or management with valuable information that they can use to improve business practices. So that sounds great, but what does it actually do? Well, I'm going to give you a breakdown of that role. First of all, you've got data visualization. So taking all of that data and information and converting it into charts and graphs that kind of tell a story in a visual way rather than just numbers on a page. Then you're going to have to understand business process. So how is that data being generated by the business or by the application that you're using or system, and then being able to use that in a data visual way. Then you have to do a lot of report preparation. So making sure that data quality is right, that the data that's coming in, building a lot of KPI, sort of metric-based reports, sort of your standard morning coffee reports, just telling you what happened yesterday to make sure that you can run the business operationally. Then you're going to be looking at monitoring key metrics. So once we've got these reports built, how do we know that everything's going okay rather than waiting a month to find out if the next monthly report has changed or if there's any problems? Somebody should be monitoring those key metrics, not just in an operational sense, but in a trend sense. That's what an analyst should be looking at. Then you need to identify business improvements. So say that a metric goes wrong, so the metric goes south. You want to then identify why it is happening and using the data to back that up. And then you identify the business improvement for the business to then sort of make that change. And again, you start monitoring that key metric to identify if that business improvement change actually worked. So they kind of work in tandem together there. Then you've got another key aspect, which is communicating with your stakeholders. You're going to be dealing with lots of people, right the way from executives, right the way down to sort of frontline staff. And it's really important that you've got those good communication skills. Data quality. When you're presenting data, it is part of your role to make sure that what you're presenting is as factual as possibly can be. And that comes down to being good with your data governance and your data quality and you understanding the business process, how the data is generated, how it's then transformed in your warehouse or your lake house or whatever you've got. And then being able to go to the business and say, this is your report, here's the caveat, or here's what's missing. So you've got to understand the data quality. So if you try and show somebody how many customers are male or female, well, maybe you only know 50% of your customers. So you've got to make sure that you bring that into your visualization. Say, this is the completeness level of the data set that I've been working with, and here is the findings that I've got. And then finally, you're looking at statistical analysis. Once you've got past the visualization, normalization, SQL sort of learning path, you're then going to have to start looking at statistics. So looking at standard deviation or mean methodologies within that or regression methodologies. And that's when you start to take it to another level. So that's the role. What's the career path look like? Well, you're probably going to start out as a junior data analyst. And then once you've got some of those key skills under your belt, you're then going to pick up to be a data analyst. That's your next level. That's your next step. Once you've got your data analyst, you've been a data analyst for a few years, what's next? You're going to look to become a senior data analyst. Very similar format to most tech jobs at the moment. But when you get to this point, you kind of got a choice to make. And that is, do you go for more potential leadership roles? So do I become a head of data analytics? Do I become a business intelligence manager or any sort of leadership role within that sort of spectrum? Or do you become a principal data analyst? And what the difference is, yes, they both may involve management, but I think one in the leadership roles, like a business intelligence manager or a head of data or head of analytics, they're focused mainly on management skills, whereas a principal I would expect them to have more of a discipline focus. So you could be a principal data analyst in a specific part of your company. It could be visualization. It could be the actual business acumen that you've got that brings that together. So they're slightly different, but they probably both have sort of management in them. One is more focused on only being a manager, and the other is focusing more on being a specialist in that area. So I'm going to take you through something called T-shape experience. And that's what I'm going to call it today. It's got many different names, but essentially, as people, we carry out roles that, yes, have a core demographic of things that we do, but there are other roles that we kind of take skills from. And when I look at data analysts, I see three things. I see a business analyst, mainly a data analyst, and then a data engineer. So you're going to pick up some roles as you go along. We're going to start with a junior data analyst. And as a junior data analyst, there are three things that you need to start picking up and learning as you progress. And that is visualization, so how to understand how to build a story using data, using visual ways rather than just numbers on a page. Normalization, so understanding how third normal form works. And then SQL as the language. These three things will help you get a junior data analyst job in no time. I know there's a lot of people that say use Excel. I, for one, started in Excel myself, but that was 10 years ago. Data wasn't as big as it is now, it wasn't as complex as it is now, and there wasn't this many types of data. So when people say that they started in Excel, it's probably because they did that 10 years ago. In today's modern world, Excel is something that you would use to give you that feeling if you want to move into data analytics, but not to get a job as a data analyst if you've just used Excel. There are people that have these skills already that will blow you out of the water. And that's just me being honest. I apologize if people don't agree with that, but I'm just telling you how it is from my perspective as a sort of a leader in data and who I would hire as people mainly with these sort of three skills if I'm looking for a junior. When you move on to a data analyst though, we start looking at other parts of the T-shape. So business analyst, I would expect sort of process analysis now to come into your sort of way of working and way of thinking. So how is that data generated? Where is it generated from? And what was the process that led to that generation? I'd expect you to pick up some statistical modeling at this point. So looking at mean, standard deviation, regression, really sort of the basic disciplines within statistical modeling. You may not be an expert, but I do expect you to sort of pick that sort of things up. Then you'll be doing more trend analysis and then schema modeling as well. So when I talk about schema modeling, I'm talking about your star schemas or your Kimball method, whichever sort of whatever floats your boat really, but I'm looking at those schema models. But on the data engineer side, you're going to start picking up things like your data pipelines and data quality. So understanding how that data is generated through the process, but then understanding how is it technically pushed through to your report. What transformation has that gone through to get to there? I don't expect you to build it, but you are expected to understand how data works and how it's generated. And then how is that data quality looking? These are the three things, or two things that I would want from sort of a data analyst. When it comes to a senior, we're then going to start looking at things like educating the business. So now you are out with the business, educating them how to become data driven, educating them on how to move forward with data, educating them on how data works in the general world. You're going to start picking up leadership as a data analyst. So you're going to be looking after your juniors and teaching your data analysts new techniques, new skills, and be at the forefront of that. For a data analyst, I'd also expect you to be an expert in visualization. So things like the tooling that you use, and we'll get onto that in a second, I would like you to be an expert in that. Then we look at your algorithmic approach. So now you're going to start looking at how do I incorporate sort of data science, forecasting. That's the type of stuff that I would look at being a senior when you've got the other aspects. Then we look at, you're going to be bringing in database design now. You're going to be looking from the whole of the warehouse, not just the schema layer, but maybe you've got an ODS layer or you've got a EDW layer, whatever you've got. And you're going to be helping the engineers design that as a senior. So it's not just understanding it, it's actually implementing some of these things as well. That brings us on to tooling. So the three areas we're going to cover off here are languages, databases, visualization tools. So there are three languages that you're going to learn as a data analyst. There's SQL, R, and Python. SQL is number one. R and Python are when you start to move from that junior to data analyst to senior analyst. Is when it's probably between data analyst and senior analyst, I would say, is when you're going to really pick up R and Python because they're going to allow you to do more statistical modeling, allow you to take more of an algorithmic approach to your work. When we think about databases, this is not going to be a comprehensive list, but it's an idea of most of the relational databases that you may come across. And again, technology's changed, so I'm just going to give you a flavor of what you're looking at, and that is Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and MySQL. These are sort of the ideal sort of databases that you'll use or come across, mainly SQL Server from Microsoft and PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL. Depends on who you speak to. Now, when we look at visualization tools, again, this is not a comprehensive list, but there are three major players within that area, and they are Power BI, Tableau, and again, R. So R has its own language, but that's another video for another time. So these are the three main players. You do have other things like ClickView, you do have Business Objects, you do have Amazon QuickSight. There's a whole plethora of other tools around that, and there's more and more coming into play. But really, the major players are Power BI and Tableau, and then R is sort of your more statistical, analytical future. So Power BI and Tableau are probably your main two. Now we're going to look at methodologies. So what type of methodologies as an analyst am I going to come across? Well, first and foremost, in probably every sort of tech or data role these days, Agile is one of the key foundations of that. And that's really monitoring how you work and how you get tickets done and really give you the ethos of fail fast. And it also allows you to put people over process. So you've got things like Scrum, Kanban, and you'll pick all those up, and they're probably all videos within themselves. So maybe I'll do a few of those at a later date. But yeah, Agile is just kind of the way that we help get work through our teams and how we work together more collaboratively. How do we work with the business more collaboratively? And then how do we get stuff out the door quicker? So that's kind of a really high level, probably a poor overview of Agile actually, but yeah, we won't worry about that. Another one you're going to probably look into when you're doing more of the business process or sort of any sort of business process improvement piece, you're going to be leaning into Six Sigma, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And you've got your yellow belt right up to your black belt. And that's kind of where you're going to be really understanding how to improve business process. And then finally, I've mentioned it a few times already, but it's more around statistical modeling. So the methodologies you're looking at are mean, standard deviation, and regression are probably the three methodologies you're going to be looking into when you're a bit further on, a bit further advanced. They're the types of things you're going to be looking at. Okay, this is a question I get asked quite a lot, and that is how long does it take to become a senior data analyst? Well, it really does depend, and a lot of the time it is juniors asking me this, but it does depend on the business you work in, your enthusiasm, the skills you've learned, or the skills you had before you came with junior data analyst. There's a lot into it. But let's say you're basically starting off, you've just picked up SQL, you've just picked up visualization, and you're going to be looking for around 18 to 24 months of being a junior data analyst. And then once you've hit that sort of 2 years time frame, one, you'll know whether you like the job or not, and two, have the technical skills probably to move up a level into that data analyst role. And what that will lead to then is you being a data analyst then for 2 to maybe 5 years, depending on, it is kind of a varied scale. I get that. It's kind of a wide range, but really that allows you to hone your craft and make sure that you are a very good data analyst. You do understand visualization really well. You can communicate with the business. You can make change in organizations. And then after that, 5+ years is probably what you're looking at before you can even think about becoming a senior data analyst. Another one that I get asked quite a lot about is education requirements. Now, for me, it really does depend on your specialism. So, if you work in telecom, energy, TV, or media, or e-commerce, or marketing, quite a lot of industries, I would say your education doesn't really matter. It's more about your experience. Now, what I should caveat that with saying is that education is great and it can give you a really good foundation. But if you take it back from when I started, if I was to do a degree, I would have learned JavaScript doing a computer science degree. Now, that's completely irrelevant for what I'm doing today. There are educational courses out there that you can go on. There are degrees you can do to become a data analyst, business analyst, these sorts of things. But I would say in general, you could probably do the same as being a junior data analyst in that time frame, in the right environment, in the right company. But when we're looking at moving into something like sports science, that is a specialism. And the reason that's specialism is because you have to understand the whole concept of sports science. It's not saying you can't learn it, but there is a whole degree that you should really go through to get that sort of grounding in what the data looks like when it comes out. So I would say it really does depend on your specialism. But for me, it does all come down to person over education. I would rather somebody who's really keen, really enthusiastic on moving forward with their career, understanding and willing to learn anything, than somebody who's got a degree and kind of just wants to do it their way. So you can always teach people technical ability. You can't teach them cultural fit. You can't teach them sort of how they're going to work and their enthusiasm to pick up new skills. There's a really fine balance between the two. So there we have it. We have covered off what a data analyst is. We've done a breakdown of the role, career path. I hope you really enjoyed the T-shape experience. I haven't really seen many people talk about your not just your core role, but the other roles that you're going to sort of incorporate into your job. We covered off your tooling, your methodologies, your career timeline, and your education. So it's quite a chunky video to get through. But I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. And I really hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.